Andrea here from Nutrition Matters. I am a community herbalist, a nutritionist, as well as a mother of 3 children, and I've been a mom for over 10 years now. My eldest is 10, my middle is 3.5, and my daughter is 1.5. And I've been meaning to get on here and talk about herbal medicine for children and building an herbal first aid kit for days now, but I've been trying to make this video with the little ones and it's not working out so well. So hopefully I get through this whole video this time. We went outside and played in the snow most of the day, and now my house looks like this. I know it's scary, but I didn't feel like doing housework when I came back in. I had to make dinner and we just had fun, and now I'm doing this instead. Call me a procrastinator or just an opportunist. Either way, let's talk about herbal first aid. So how many of you as moms have had your child get sick with a fever or, crash their bike and they're bleeding everywhere and you're in that panic mode because that is your baby and you just don't want anything to happen to your child? So you are in high stress and you don't really necessarily know what to do, especially with fevers. That's when, you can see your child's in discomfort and you're really concerned and you're stressed out. And I know I've been there. Hands up, comment below if you've been there, just really nervous and unsure about what to do for your baby. It's definitely common, especially for first children, which is funny because they're usually exposed to the least amount of things compared to consecutive children when you've got older ones in school. But that's your trial and error, right? You've never been through it before. And your first one is definitely the one that initiates you into a lot of those phases of motherhood. And your children encountering those first illnesses and first fevers, that's a scary time. But there are definitely things we can do to help our children get through that. And having those remedies on hand and being able to provide those for our children, they give us such a sense of accomplishment and of doing and relief and just security and knowing that there's something we can do to help the body get through that. And I know it's been really comforting for me as a mom and, as a practitioner, but as a mom to see how these remedies work in my kids and know that I can do something and I'm empowered because I know that I can help my kids and I don't need to reach out and ask for help unless I'm concerned. And then, of course, if you're ever feeling unsure, you trust that gut, you trust your intuition, and you get your kid to the doctor, and you make sure if you're ever feeling uncomfortable. But we still, have these things on hand for those common things that we're going to deal with. Like research hand, foot, and mouth disease. When your kid's in school, there's they go to the playground. It's a highly contagious viral thing that goes around. I know 2 of my children have had it very mildly because I knew as soon as I saw the first blisters, I knew how to pump them with antiviral herbs. And they got a few little blisters. Ethan didn't even get any. He had a fever. Elijah had like one here, one on his hands and a couple on his toes. And that was it. And he was better in a few days. But if you don't know what to do, then these things can get a lot worse. So research, knowledge is power. Know what to do for whooping cough. Even though there's a vaccine for a lot of these things, they can still happen and they can still occur. So know what to do for whooping cough. Know what to do for the flu. Research symptoms of these things. Know meningitis. There's viral meningitis and bacterial meningitis. And even if you're vaccinated for bacterial meningitis, you can still get viral meningitis. So you should know as a mother what the symptoms are for meningitis. Also, if your child has a fever, monitor it. Monitor. Make sure they're having lots of fluids. Give them lots of rest, lots of warmth. Those are all really important things. But anyways, back to building an herbal first aid kit. The first thing you want to do is have diaphoretic herbs. These are herbs that help with a fever. So make sure you've got things like catnip and chamomile and elderflower and yarrow. I like to have these as dried teas. I prefer to give my very young children the teas especially. If I need to add a tincture to the tea, I'll do that. And then I can add some honey, and that way they're more likely to drink a large volume. If your kids don't like to drink a lot, put a straw in there. They'll drink more liquid with a straw than they will without. But you can also put them in the bottle. For a very young baby, you don't need much of that herb. You can drink it yourself if you're breastfeeding, or you can actually take an eyedropper and sneak it alongside your nipple while you're nursing and give them little dropperfuls that way of teas. And I find that very helpful. or I have found, I'm not nursing anymore, and you'll find as soon as you stop breastfeeding, if you are breastfeeding, that is when your child is more likely to get start getting more colds or worse colds, because they don't have that partial immunity from your breast milk anymore. So diaphoretic herbs, know what to do for a fever, and you can have Tylenol on hand, of course, but don't use it as a first result. Use it as a last resort, because a fever is a natural bodily process that helps the body get over bacterial and viral infections. And if you are having a fever, you don't want to suppress that, because it can drive an illness deeper. You want to monitor it, make sure it's within a safe range, and give herbs to help support the body through that, but not to stop the fever unless it gets, you know, really high, and then you can do some interventions that way. What else are we going to talk about? Oh yeah, first aid. So my second is my clumsy child. Hands up if you have one of those, because my first is my daredevil and he never gets hurt, knock on wood. But my second has already smashed his face several times just from various clumsy accidents. The worst one being a bike crash right to the mouth. And you need to know some things that help stopping bleeding. So yarrow, again, yarrow I have on as a tincture because it's good for stopping bleeding from injuries. It's also good for nosebleeds, which my eldest gets. It's also a fever herb. It's also good for menstrual cramps. Yarrow is amazing, so have that in your first aid kit, absolutely. Other things, cough and sinus. If you want to make sure you've got things on hand for like sinus and respiratory, really croupy, wet coughs, elecampane, elder again. Those two alone will usually clear up a wet cough. I also always have red clover infusion, because if it goes into that whooping cough or you need something to support lymphatic drainage, then red clover is amazing. It also tastes very yummy, so it's easy to put into a tea blend for children. It has loads of other benefits as well. So red clover is a nice one to have, usually as a dried tea, but you can also have it as a tincture. What else do I use? I'm looking up on my stash up here that I brought out to remind me. Usnea. Usnea is really great at treating certain antibiotic-resistant bacterial infections. It's also very helpful for sinus problems. So you can use it topically, and you can use it for infections of the sinus, respiratory, and digestive. It's not very systemic, so it's not going to do other kinds of infections. There are other herbs for that. And I don't want to talk about those serious, serious bacterial infection or serious things on this video, but if you have questions about those, I can refer you to some really great books and resources. And I think it's also important to know what to do if you or your children do acquire a antibiotic resistant infection, which is unfortunately more and more common these days. Other things, you've got your fever, you've got your cough and cold, you've got your first aid. You might want to have a good throat spray. I use one that's got poplar, red alder, and peppermint or cinnamon tincture, depending on what I want to flavor. And something for...
yet.
We didn't. Elijah wants to read Squirrel Nutkin. Who has these books? They are such a classic. I'll read that to you in just a minute, okay? So yeah, building an herbal first aid kit. Have some antivirals, lemon balm, Prunella vulgaris. I think I've covered all the bases.
Read it to me.
Thanks everybody. I better read Squirrel Nutkin and get back to the kiddos and this messy house. Have a good night. Bye.